Here's a story about the Russians possibly creating a space weapon and the president's opposition party using it to get what they want, all while the country worries about mental fitness. And if you want to know what any of this has to do with Black history, stick around. In 1957, the Russians put up a satellite. Some people were frightened.
It's frightening.
Some people weren't.
Not too disturbed about it, but
The people making policy were divided too, but for a different reason.
We congratulate Soviet scientists upon putting a satellite into orbit.
One of the witnesses on yesterday compared the present situation to the challenge that faced America after Pearl Harbor. In some respects, I think it is an even greater challenge.
Before Sputnik, the Republicans were saying, cut defense spending. Nuclear arms will solve the problem for us. And the Democrats were saying, no, if you do that, you're going to leave America vulnerable.
The briefing indicated that the Soviet atomic energy program was making steady progress with a view to providing nuclear warheads for their family of missiles as well as other nuclear weapons.
Now, the Russians seem to have a new space weapon.
But I imagine we will be able to catch up.
2 months after Sputnik, America tried.
Another setback for the United States in the race into outer space. Here are official Defense Department films of the launching of the 72-foot missile, a loss of thrust, and fall back to Earth in split seconds.
Now, all of this, and I know this is something you don't know, was going on while everyone was worried about the mental state of the President of the United States.
Of course, this is very distressing news to all of us, and I know that each member of the committee feels as I do. We hope that it's not serious, and the President has our prayers for early and, I hope, complete recovery.
A couple of days before the Vanguard explosion, President Eisenhower had a stroke.
Few could have expected to see President Eisenhower out again so soon after the news of his illness.
He got out of the hospital pretty quickly, but he started slurring words in press conferences, and people definitely noticed. Now the Democrats really ramped things up. They were saying that the reason Eisenhower wasn't paying attention to Sputnik was because he was basically out to lunch. They started saying, especially Johnson, that we needed to spend more money on space. So what's this got to do with Black people? Lyndon Johnson had this firm belief.
Johnson came of age, of course, in the 1930s, and many people who came of age during the New Deal and the Great Depression had this idea that Southern poverty was at the root of the system of racial injustice. He also thought that part of the reason that resistance to integration was so fierce was that there was so little to go around in terms of resources.
Johnson's idea was, if we can change the economy of the South, we can do two things. First, we can grow the economic pie. That would end racism. But there was also a second thing.
The task is to give 20 million Negroes the same chance as every other American to learn and grow, to work and share in society.
Johnson thought if we create a new economy with new kinds of jobs, then no white hiring manager will be able to say, well, Black people can't do that, because with new jobs, nobody could do that. I'm not saying any of these attitudes were right. I'm just saying this is how he thought. Johnson and other Southern senators needed a huge new project, a project they could put down south, where they could use government money to hire tons of people. They knew the Republicans would never go for it unless there was a way to say, we're doing it to beat the Russians. That is where the space program came from.
Johnson was the leader of a group of Southern Democrats who saw the space program as a main chance for their region, a chance to transform the South and to make big headway on dealing with the problems of racial injustice in the region.
And so he started holding hearings and giving speeches to talk about how we were behind in space.
Tonight, the communists have established a foothold in outer space. It is not very reassuring to be told that next year we will put a better satellite into the air. Perhaps it will even have chrome trim and automatic windshield wipers.
And when he made it to the White House 2 years later, Johnson made it happen.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
It all seems kind of dopey that the space program could end race discrimination, but at the time, there were a lot of people who thought that it might be true. Jim Jennings spent 35 years at NASA, most as a senior official.
Lyndon Johnson and Robert Kennedy was looking for a way to help integrate the South, and they saw that the space program was a federally funded program and found out that the Republican Party was interested in funding this to beat the Russians to the moon or whatever. So they thought this was a good opportunity to have a federal program that they could get the high blacks in to integrate that part of the government and also influence the local community. I'd heard these things. I didn't have a lot of facts on it, but we'd heard that the president was interested in getting blacks to come work for the space program.
If any or all of this is news to you, I have a book I want to suggest. It's the one behind me, We Could Not Fail, which I wrote along with Stephen Moss. There's a paperback version, and you can also get it in an audiobook form from Audible.